And welcome back to the Two Words Podcast Season 3 finale, where we are talking about none other than the dead man, the Phenom, the American Wait.
Yeah, careful.
This is a family show. The Undertaker.
The American Bad Booty.
The American Bad Booty, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Of wrestlers, I think that you could find so influential wrestlers, of people who shaped our generation of wrestling fan, it's got to be The Undertaker. There's nobody better. And I feel like the year that he, earlier this season, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it would have been an injustice not to dedicate an entire episode. And I'm telling you, we could have dedicated this entire hour to just talking about The Undertaker. So I guess the question is, what made him that way? I mean, what made him such an influential part of our wrestling journey?
Yeah. Quite a lot of things. The thing that always stuck out to me, especially as I've gotten older and kind of learned more about the ins and outs of the business, he has had tremendous respect for the business his entire career, to the point where it's very clear he has never forgotten where he came from. He has always remained loyal to WWE in the good times and the bad times. He never jumped ship. He stuck it out even when, WWE was losing the Monday Night Wars. And even when he became like one of the biggest names in the business, he didn't let that go to his head. He didn't, become this, arrogant, person, which, he almost earned the right to be.
Definitely.
But he didn't have that arrogance about him. In fact, he cared about the new guys. And, you can kind of tell the person that he was, given the fact that he was the quote unquote judge for the wrestler's court.
Yeah.
Back there.
Yeah.
Everybody trusted him to make the decision.
Yeah.
Because they knew he would be fair about it.
Well, and I think you're right. I think he set the bar in ring.
Yeah.
But he also, from the stories you hear, he really set the bar for how wrestlers acted outside of the ring, like backstage when nobody was looking. No, you're going to respect each other. You're going to respect you're going to respect these guys who have been doing it. You're going to respect the guys who are doing it, in the future. Respect was really his game. And I think that another part, that tenacity shaped his character. Yeah. Because you can very easily see him being when he walks into a ring, everybody immediately has this reaction that you can tell isn't just a pop.
Yeah.
It is not just cheap heat. It is, oh, the Undertaker's music is playing and I know what happens if I don't respect that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know who he is. And so it's almost you can definitely see if he walked into a room backstage, people sit up straighter, people act that way. And, it's getting more into our faith side of things. There's a guy named John Randalls who used to talk about, everybody is either there's two types of people. There's supernovas and black holes. And supernovas come in and they light up the room and people notice when they're there and they change what's going on. People change when that dude walks in a room. And black holes do the exact opposite. They suck all the energy out and everybody gets really upset. And Undertaker really was that supernova. He walked in and people identified him and changed what they did. But then you also look at what he did in the ring, and he was able to keep one character, essentially.
Yeah.
4 or 5 different versions of that character, but one character for 30 years.
Which is incredible because, like you said, the versions, his ability to successfully reinvent himself in all these different versions and still still hold to that overall gimmick, that is incredibly difficult to do for any wrestler one time.
Yeah.
Let alone multiple times over 30 plus years, and it ring true every single time.
Yeah, definitely. And we give the motorcycle taker, as we might call him,
There you go.
the American bad guy. But that even still, like, it fits somehow inside of.
That was the most different because they changed his music.
They changed his music. He did more talking.
Did more
that sort
talking.
of stuff.
He came out on a motorcycle instead of slowly sauntering.
Yeah, but even that was a really, now that I'm just like thinking about it really heavily, the original idea for the Undertaker was like this Old West Undertaker.
Yeah.
The ominous presence in those old westerns. And so putting that version of Undertaker in the middle, which I know we're going to talk about this, but we'll just talk about it now. Putting that right in the middle of the character helped him transition to kind of a mixture of the two, but he's no longer like that weird spooky
right
Undertaker. Now
but he still had that. He still commanded that fear though. Even during that run.
Now it's just a dude in a black trench coat that I'm very afraid of. That can somehow make lightning strike.
And that's obviously more like his actual personality.
Yeah.
Which I think is great that they use that for his final match with AJ Styles. They let him come back as that version of himself. And it's still, in that match, there was still that air of,
supernatural
kind of spooky stuff, like him popping out of the grave.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. All that neat garbage that they threw in on that weird COVID WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But they pulled it off so well. That was the best thing about that WrestleMania.
100%.
Which, arguably, not a difficult thing to do. But but it was really, really good. It would have been good in any WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And... yeah, it was beautiful to see. Also, I'm surprised because he has been such a stickler with the business and the rules of wrestling. I'm surprised that he won his last match.
Yeah,
because that has traditionally been the rule: is you lose your last match because you're supposed to be putting someone else over.
Yeah,
but I think if there was anybody in the company worth breaking that rule for, it was the loyalist workhorse that the company's ever had.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that probably Undertaker would have
Oh, absolutely.
happily lost that match, but he's also I'm going to do what I'm told.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. So if I'm told I'm going to win this match, then I'm going to win the match. Sorry, y'all. And that's the crazy thing is like, you are so respected. You're respected by Vince. You're respected that much by Vince McMahon, who is not doing anything that's not going to make money, which is understandable. But if it's not drawing me money, then it's not working.
Right.
But I think the exception there's the exception.
He also had an incredible moveset for his size as well. Yeah. The last ride, the tombstone.
Do you have more of that wall?
Drover? Yeah, I have another one. And I never remember what the thing where he walks on the rope is called.
It's called Old School.
Old School.
That's all it
right.
is. Which is a weird name.
Right, which is why I never, because I'm always thinking it's got to be some sort of weird supernatural name.
Yeah.
Or death name. But anyway, his moveset is iconic, classic. He's an incredible athlete, which is not always very common with the big men.
No.
Like he's traditionally, or I mean not traditionally, but he's throughout his career been very agile, very fast when he needs to be.
I remember one of the first wrestling games that I played, video games, and the first time I played as the Undertaker, and I accidentally, I don't know what I was button mashing, I think at the time, and I hit a button and Undertaker does a lariat leg drop. And I'm like, why are you jumping and flipping? Like, you just doing a standing somersault is really what he was doing. But he could do that in real life.
Yeah, he absolutely could. He's very resilient.
Yeah.
And he had a couple rough years. I remember a few of those streak years where we're just like, yeah, maybe we should be done. maybe we should wrap that up. But even then, after that, he would come back and he'd look amazing.
Yeah.
And wrestle amazing.
He always was able to convince you that he could do more.
Yeah. And he's still not ruled out the possibility of it either.
He says that.
He has recently brought up, well, you know, I don't know. I saw Stone Cold over there, and he looked like he was having a fun time.
Yeah, Stone Cold did look like he was having a fun time.
My gosh, he was a kid in a candy store.
It was great. And honestly, I think that, you know, we talk about this character, but legitimately in the ring, like you know that match is really, really good.
Oh yeah.
So if I was thinking about it, if I was talking to somebody and they were trying to get me to convince, and I was having to convince them to get into wrestling, and it's like, I'll watch 4 matches or I'll watch 5 matches. I'll give you Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. I'll give you Triple H versus Undertaker 1 and 2 at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you Edge versus Undertaker. Mm-hmm. And those are 5 of the greatest matches ever put together by anybody. And they were like one right after another. They really were, yeah. Like there was legitimate, you know, when we talk about those streak years, you know, when he wrestled Roman Reigns, and it really wasn't all that great. And we talk about the streak years when he wrestled, you know, even the Bray Wyatt match, it wasn't super great, which I don't think was his fault. But
was that the one with the overhead projections of maggots and junk?
No, that was Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton.
Oh, okay.
Which was equally awful.
It was, yeah.
But there was legitimately, we forget there was a string of like 6 or 7 years. I mean, it was Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and then CM Punk.
Yeah, which was also a good one.
Yeah, which is awesome. I mean,
that's one of my favorites.
It was one of those like, that a guy has made it when they're going to give him 30 minutes at WrestleMania, mm-hmm. or they're going to give him 45 minutes at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. That's how you know you've garnered some respect. What are some of your favorite Taker moments?
So like we said, you mentioned my best ones, which is that 4-year stretch of the 2 HBK and 2 Triple H matches. It was really good. That second HBK match, because they put it on last. They figured it out. They learned that these Undertaker matches need to be the main event.
Yeah.
And so they did that. I think they did that for at least one of the Triple H matches too. Taker winning his first WWE Championship at Survivor Series 91 versus Hulk Hogan, which was 1 year after arriving to WWE. I really love the storyline where the Undertaker kidnapped Stone Cold from the hospital and attempted to sacrifice him before Kane saved him.
There were some weird moments there.
Of course, the Hell in a Cell match with Mankind. I know that's typically thought of as a Mankind highlight, but the Undertaker was pulling off some pretty.
Nobody else could have done that match with Mick Foley.
Absolutely.
I mean, he really couldn't have. And you talk, you know, and I'll go back. I could spend an entire podcast talking about Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker.
Absolutely.
But you know, you read in Shawn Michaels' book, like that first match was so good.
Yeah.
That first match was so good. That match convinced him to retire, because he tells a story at the beginning of his book, Wrestling with Faith, that he went back to his hotel after the WrestleMania, and he was sitting on the edge of his bed, and his wife was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "That should have been it. That should have just been it. That should have been the last match. I don't want to wrestle again." Like, I don't have to wrestle. When it's so good, it wasn't like I don't want to wrestle. It's like I don't have to. Right. There's nothing else to do.
Was it that first match that Shawn Michaels came in as basically the anti-Undertaker?
Yeah, from like he ascended from the ceiling.
Coat, the white cowboy hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
That whole match, man, piece by piece, that was such a great piece. And you know, in that match, there's a moment where he does the tope suicido. Mm-hmm. Is it a tope suicido if you do it over the top rope? I don't know. He did it. He jumped over the top rope, and Like he landed on a cameraman, but he almost landed on his head.
That's right.
And there was like Shawn Michaels, you see that like it's really the only botch in the match really. You see Shawn Michaels pull the cameraman, and it's like Undertaker was 100% willing to snap his neck in half on behalf of this match. But so few people, I mean, like so few people would have any problem getting in the ring with Undertaker because they knew they were going on the same way.
Yeah, I don't think I can't recall him ever like injuring anybody.
Yeah,
or anything of that nature. Like he's a safe worker. He takes care of the people he's wrestling with.
I love the moment of him popping out of the casket during his feud with Randy Orton. After Randy Orton had set the casket on fire, and then like a few months later, he came back. That was really great. I think also one of the greatest moments to a WrestleMania build-up was him and Brock Lesnar. When Brock Lesnar yelled, "I'm gonna kill you," and the Undertaker could have said anything right there, but he chose to say, "You're gonna have to," and it's like, oh,
it was great.
Like I was 10 years old and I just loved it so much. Like that is a movie scene.
That was it.
You can't. Martin Scorsese couldn't write that.
It was a beautiful feud.
Despite the fact he doesn't write films, but still, that doesn't matter.
That's where they had like 100 guys down there trying to separate them.
Yeah,
when that happened, I mean, that was so. The build up to that match was so good.
It was fantastic. So, do you ever think there's going to be another? I mean, of that magnitude. I'm not even going to say like somebody who could come in and strike fear that same way.
Right.
Because I think anything in the fear realm, it would look kind of like a ripoff. It would just be a ripoff. That's what it would be.
So, like we look at like Stone Cold, The Rock. We look at John Cena. All the bigger names, the bigger celebrity.
Yeah.
Okay. But when it comes to the actual, like, just the wrestling, just the focus, and the length of it, and the quality of it over time, no. First of all, WWE doesn't take enough time to develop characters like this anymore. We saw that with both incarnations of Bray Wyatt. If anyone was going to be the next Taker, it probably would have been him. But they wasted the opportunities, threw away months of development, and fired him, despite being one of the most popular characters in recent history for WWE.
Yeah.
And there could also, I mean, so much of, especially the back half of Undertaker's career was defined by the WrestleMania streak. They're not going to be able to pull anything like that off again. Taker built a lot of his mystique around matches that aren't done anymore as well. Or at least not done in the same way. You know, Hell in a Cell, Buried Alive matches, Inferno matches. These things just aren't, you know, Hell in a Cell is a glorified cage match these days. Yeah. It's not what it was with Mankind.
Yeah, anytime somebody now is like, we're going to do it in Hell in a... Like, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, the Cody versus Seth 3 is going to be a Hell in a Cell. And I'm like, okay.
It's going to be good, but it's not going to... The fact that you're just going to have a harder floor around the ring to suplex him on, and you're going to toss him into the little chain link thing a couple times. That's really all that it adds to it anymore.
Yeah.
The Buried Alive matches were some of my favorite matches early on. You had those with Mankind, Stone Cold, where you actually throw your opponent in an open grave and bulldoze a whole bunch of dirt on top of them. Amazing.
Yeah.
You don't do that. You can't do that anymore. No. The Inferno matches, first person to be set on fire loses.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Like all that added to like this big air of like these matches were reserved for the Undertaker. If the Undertaker wasn't in the matches, they rarely ever happened.
Yeah.
And that just added this whole new level to his character. So even decades later, as he's just wrestling at WrestleMania and they're just straightforward matches, you still have that whole back catalog in your mind thinking, but I know what this dude's capable of. What kind of crazy junk this guy used to do. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll have
you had the streak. And walking into his match with Edge, which you mentioned earlier, or with Triple H or with Shawn Michaels or CM Punk, there was always something in the back of your head that was like, well, this story could go a different way.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until he had a way of being able to tell this story where it's like, yeah, I might lose. I don't know. You know, and not a lot of people could have a 16 match win streak and still convince you like it could be over at any WrestleMania. Who knows?
Right.
Like he was the one that kind of convinced you of that. I don't think that there is anybody that I don't look at anybody now and think, oh, he commands respect when he walks into a room.
Yeah.
Like this.
Not at that level.
Not at that level. And it's like, I don't know. Where do you even start? You know,
the fact that he had such an air of invincibility with this streak that when Brock Lesnar, who is a massive human being who destroys anybody in his path,
yeah,
when he won, nobody could believe it.
yeah.
Like, if anyone's going to beat up an old, frail man, it's going to be Brock Lesnar. But still, when that happened, everyone's like, no, this is impossible. That's the Phenom.
Yeah.
How did he do it?
Why? Why?
And that is one of the most heartbreaking but powerful storytelling endings to one of these matches.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful and painful. And I'm glad they ended that WrestleMania on a big high note.
Yeah.
Because everyone was really sad after that.
match. Yeah. That was definitely not supposed to be.
I watched that whole WrestleMania 30 before this year's WrestleMania. I'm like, man, this was a roller coaster of emotion.
It was so... My emotions! Well, some quick facts about The Undertaker that I have. Before he got into wrestling, he went to Texas Wesleyan University, which didn't know he was Methodist. Guess you don't have to be Methodist to... Isn't that the Wesleyans?
I thought they were their own thing.
Oh, maybe they are. I'm not... I don't know.
No.
No, now we have to know.
Oh, no, yeah, it's Methodist. Okay. Yeah, Methodist theology.
Because John Wesley.
I'm
a thinking man. Went to Wesleyan College on a basketball scholarship and even went over to Europe and played some G League basketball.
Basketball.
Yeah. That was when big men could play basketball. Like that was when, that was the time of like Bill Lambier and David Aguirre. And it's like you had guys who were legitimately like, 6'11", 250 pounds. They were just like these giant guys that would like punch people in the face, or
they would just stand at the goal on the other side.
Like that was back when you could do that.
They could just drop it in.
There was a weird time between then and then, and let's see. Real name Mark Calloway. He has wrestled under the name The Undertaker since 1990 with monikers such as The Phenom and The Dead Man. However, that is just the last of 10 names he has gone by in the squared circle. Earlier incarnations included Mark Callis, Mean Mark Callis, Mean Mark, Dice Morgan, Texas Red, Commando, The Punisher, The Master of Pain, and Kane, The Undertaker. That's right. We forget Kane was originally the name for The Undertaker, and then around 91, they just kind of dropped it out of nowhere.
I also forgot he was a redhead.
Yeah. You kind of forget that he was a weird looking redhead too. And Undertaker's shot in the WWE came because, do you know what film got The Undertaker his WWE chance?
Oh, I feel like I've heard this story, but I don't remember.
Suburban Commando.
Yeah.
He played the bad guy the super strong bad guy whose goal was to destroy the immortal Hulk Hogan. And the Hulkster noticed his strength and acting career, and after finding out that he was a professional wrestler, he called up Vince McMahon. I think that sounds more like Hulk Hogan's telling of the story, because Hulk Hogan can't stand not being the guy that found the guy, you know?
For real, yeah.
So, those are just some fun things. I also think he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Which he's very big for doing Brazilian. Like, he's so big, I don't think there's a weight class for him to fight in. If he decided, because everybody talks about, you could have gone into MMA, and because he's done some MMA stuff. It's like, I don't think there's a weight class for him. I don't think there's anybody there. I don't think he'd be allowed, like, by any by any group of fighters. That's our limited discussion about The Undertaker. I'm sure we could spend a lot of time, and maybe someday we'll spend more time.
Well, I mean, look, if you haven't been keeping up, go watch the Hall of Fame ceremony from this year and listen to his Hall of Fame speech. It's fantastic. It shows. I mean, that's the other thing we didn't really mention, is that he stayed in character.
Oh, yeah, for 30 years.
For 30 years. He did not ever break character in public when he was seen around. He was always The Undertaker. And to see him break character with, I guess the first real time was with the Last Ride documentary.
Yeah.
A couple years ago. And to see him break character in this speech and talk about who he really is, and talk about his wife, and talk about his faith, which was an awesome thing that I'm glad they allowed, on the show. Like, it was just a really neat wrap up to his career. I kind of hope he stays out of the ring and just let this be the end of it. But watch that speech, and if you don't get all the feels that we have for The Undertaker, then you're already dead inside.
You just aren't alive.